The quiet Chicago suburb of Deerfield has always been considered one of the safest places to live in Illinois. 20,000 residents enjoyed a peaceful life in this affluent area, where everyone knew their neighbor, and the loudest events were school football games and local charity fairs. It was especially pleasant to live here in the fall, when the trees along the tidy streets were painted in gold and crimson colors, and the air was filled with the freshness and aroma of fallen leaves. However, the morning of October 4th, 2007, forever changed the townspeople's perception of their cozy suburb. The events that unfolded that day in one of the local condominiums shook not only Deerfield but the entire country, revealing a dark story of passion, jealousy, and obsession that had been brewing for years under the guise of the everyday life of successful Americans. Deerfield had always prided itself on its reputation as the perfect town for family life. Luxurious homes with manicured lawns, prestigious schools, low crime rates. All this attracted successful professionals from Chicago who dreamed of a peaceful life away from the urban bustle. Local residents usually left their doors unlocked, and children played carefree on the streets until late in the evening. The local police were more concerned with speeding violations and loud teenage parties than with serious crimes. This was the very American paradise that glossy magazines wrote about, with white picket fences, backyard barbecues, and friendly smiles from neighbors. But beneath this idyllic picture, as is often the case, there were dark secrets of its own. The story that happened that October morning showed that even in the most prosperous places, dramas worthy of the darkest crime novels can unfold. It reminded everyone that behind the closed doors of tidy houses, passions sometimes lurk that can lead to the most terrible consequences. The morning silence in Roni Reiter's apartment was shattered by eerie screams and dull thuds. The neighbors, genuinely alarmed, wasted no time in calling the 911 emergency hotline, begging them to urgently find out what was going on there. Police officers rushed to the call in an instant, but no one opened the door, so they had to resort to radical measures and break the lock. Once inside the apartment, law enforcement officers discovered a gruesome scene. Right on the kitchen floor, face down, lay the bloodied body of a woman. Poor Roni had been shot a total of 7 times. Bullets hit her head, arms, and pregnant belly. Officers speculated that in the last moments of her life, the victim was desperately trying to protect her unborn child by covering her stomach with her hands. That's why, in addition to the fatal wounds to her torso, Roni's hands were also riddled with bullet holes. But what drew particular attention were the 2 wounds on her stomach. It seemed that the killer deliberately aimed there, wanting to get rid of the future baby. It appeared that this defenseless child in the mother's womb was the main target of the inhumanly brutal attack. And after dealing with the fetus, the merciless criminal finished off the woman with a shot to the back of the head. The child in the mother's womb also died without ever being born. The stunned police officers were shocked by what they saw and could not believe their eyes. Only one question was spinning in their heads. Who could commit such a bestial, shocking crime against a pregnant woman? Forensic experts, having examined the crime scene, found a spent 9mm caliber shell casing and 5 unused cartridges next to the body. There were no signs of intrusion or struggle in the apartment. Roni was not raped. The version of robbery or robbery attack was immediately discarded. All this only reinforced the assumption that the murder was deliberate and motivated by personal reasons. Roni clearly did not become a random victim. Most likely, this young woman had an insidious enemy who wished her the worst. Reconstructing the events of that morning, investigators speculated that the attack occurred when Roni was getting ready for work and opened the door to leave the apartment. In search of witnesses who could shed light on the circumstances of the crime, detectives interviewed all the neighbors of the deceased. They said they heard sounds that resembled dull blows rather than gunshots. So law enforcement officers assumed that the attacker could have used a weapon with a silencer. One of the residents of the building saw that shortly before the tragedy, Around 7 in the morning, a slim African-American-looking teenager in a hooded sweatshirt was climbing the stairs in the direction of Roni's apartment. And another neighbor witnessed the same young man running out of the entrance, jumping into a small black car, and speeding away from the parking lot. The police seized video surveillance footage from cameras near the building and carefully studied it. The footage clearly showed a black car resembling a Volkswagen pulling up to the building at 7:04 in the morning and leaving at 7:55. The time frame perfectly matched the approximate time of Roni's murder. However, it was not possible to establish the identity of the driver from the video, unfortunately. In the victim's purse, a strange letter with ominous revelations was found. It was about Sean, the father of Roni's unborn child. The anonymous author claimed to have dug up all the dirt on Sean. Allegedly, this man was fooling around with women in various parts of the world. The letter even included a list with the names and phone numbers of 16 mistresses with whom Sean had affairs. According to Sean's close friends, he did indeed often boast about his conquests on the love front, calling women prey. He even initially perceived Roni's pregnancy as another attempt to lasso him, although later he claimed that he was happy about the prospect of fatherhood. The message also mentioned Roni's pregnancy and Sean's reaction to this news. He allegedly stated that he did not want this child. The detective speculated that the letter could be related to the tragic death of the pregnant woman. Perhaps Sean, the father of the unborn baby, might know something about the killer's motives. The teenager seen by witnesses became the prime suspect. The police put out a search for him and the black car. Meanwhile, investigators began studying Roni's social circle, hoping to find her ill-wishers. Roni Reiter was born in the tiny town of Potosi, Wisconsin. It was there, in Wisconsin, at a charity event that she met her beloved Sean. A spark immediately flared between them, and they fell in love at first sight. After graduating from college, Roni moved to the small town of Deerfield, Illinois. It was a wealthy suburb of Chicago with a population of 20,000 residents. Sean also lived nearby. That fateful morning, 42-year-old Roni Reiter was alone in her apartment. As always, she was getting ready for work. The woman lived alone in a condominium. Roni was in her 7th month of pregnancy and was eagerly awaiting the birth of her firstborn. She had even already chosen a name for her future daughter. She wanted to name her Skylar. The father of the child was Roni's beloved, 45-year-old Sean Gale, whom she had been dating for 17 years, but they never lived together and were not married. Their relationship could be called open. The detectives had many questions for the alleged father, so they summoned Sean for interrogation. It turned out that in the past, Sean Gale was a football star, played for the Chicago Bears team, but at the time of the murder, he had already finished his sports career. The interrogation lasted about 10 hours. With tears in his eyes, the man talked about how much he loved Roni and was waiting for the birth of their baby. According to Sean, he and Roni were a happy, loving couple. No one doubted the woman's feelings for him. But with Sean, everything was not so unambiguous. The information from the anonymous letter about Gale's numerous affairs on the side was confirmed. Sean himself admitted his infidelities to the cops and explained that Roni knew about his cheating, so she was offended and kept her distance. But the man could not help himself because of his own love-loving nature. Interestingly, everyone took Sean's numerous affairs for granted, attributing it to his love-loving nature. No one even wondered why a successful athlete had not married Roni in 17 years, even though she was expecting a child from him. Perhaps he was simply collecting women as trophies? Despite this, Sean was sincerely happy about the prospect of fatherhood and was eagerly awaiting the birth of his and Roni's child. The news of the death of his beloved and unborn baby was a terrible blow to him. He seemed truly shattered by grief. In addition, Sean's sturdy athletic build did not match the description of the slender teenager seen by neighbors in the entrance at all. During the interrogation, Sean explained to the police that he had overslept that morning and woke up later than usual, around 9:15. after which he went to the barber shop to get a haircut. The man's alibi was confirmed by the receptionist of the beauty salon, but it turned out that at the time of the murder, he was quite close to the crime scene. The barber shop was located just about 10 minutes walk from Roni's house. The detectives treated this information with some skepticism, because Sean could well have killed the woman with his own hands or entrusted this dirty work to someone else. So the investigators were in no hurry to cross him off the list of suspects and continued a thorough check. They tried to ask Sean's friends and acquaintances if he could be capable of such a brutal murder, what his relationship with Roni was like, and whether he really was happy about the prospect of fatherhood. All the couple's close ones unanimously assured that Sean could not have committed such an atrocity under any circumstances. He allegedly sincerely waited for the appearance of the baby and loved Roni, despite his numerous affairs. When the detectives visited Sean's home for another conversation, they found confirmation of this. In the man's apartment, they found several books on parenting, as well as baby items. It seemed that he was really preparing for the role of a father. During the conversation, the police asked Sean who, in his opinion, could be behind this monstrous crime. In response, Sean handed the cops a hefty list of 16 names of women with whom he had recently had affairs, and especially highlighted one name among them, Monika Kurowska. According to the man, Monika was a fitness model from Poland. Despite his image as a loving boyfriend, Sean lived a double life for years, skillfully manipulating the feelings of many women. For him, it was a kind of game where each new victory pleased his male ego. They met several times when he lived in Europe, but a year ago their relationship ended. However, Monika could not come to terms with the rejection in any way. After the breakup, she began to stalk Sean. She flew to the USA, tracked him down, and started to bother him around the clock with calls and messages. One night, Monika appeared near his apartment complex and began knocking on all the doors in a row, including the neighbors and his own. When Sean went outside, he saw that one of the windows was broken and Monika's hand was adorned with blood. The man considered her abnormal and potentially dangerous. After that incident, Sean even issued a protective order against Monika. He suspected that it was she who sent the anonymous letter about the infidelity to Roni and his other mistresses, which is why Roni quarreled with him. In Sean's opinion, Monika was behind this message because she followed him and dug up all his dirty secrets. In addition, the text contained mistakes characteristic of a person who speaks broken English. Even Sean's mother received a similar letter. The detectives became interested in this sinister lady and quickly found her. During the interrogation, Monika categorically denied any involvement in Roni's death, stating that she had an ironclad alibi. She allegedly was at work that morning. The police carefully checked everything and confirmed her words. However, the version of events as presented by Monika differed somewhat from the one Sean told. The woman admitted that she did come to the States for him, hoping to regain her lost love. And when she got to his house, she found Sean in the company of another woman and, in a rage, banged on the window so hard that she accidentally broke it. After that, Monika allegedly severed all ties with him, and that was the last time she saw him. The girl admitted that she did send letters to Roni and Sean's mother. However, the police treated this story with distrust and continued to consider Monika as one of the main suspects. It seemed that the investigation had reached a dead end. The cops had reasonable doubts about the probable involvement in the crime of both Sean himself and his stalker. Each of them had their own motives for getting rid of Roni, but at the same time, both had more or less reliable alibis, and no other leads were visible on the horizon. Suddenly, an unexpected turn occurred in this confusing case. The police officers tirelessly interviewed everyone who was acquainted with the deceased and her lover in one way or another. And one of Roni's friends shared her suspicions with the detectives about a certain Marnie Young, a woman literally obsessed with Sean. It quickly became clear that this same Marnie, a divorced mother of 3, was also having an affair with Sean. They met 6 years ago at a Chicago Bears fan convention, and later Sean himself contacted Marnie on real estate matters, because the woman, among other things, worked part-time as a realtor. It was through her that Sean conducted transactions for the purchase of houses and apartments. Marnie, as a single mother with 3 children on her neck, was spinning like a squirrel in a wheel and took on any job. She was a realtor, a waitress, and even sometimes posed for explicit photo shoots. Gradually, they grew closer, and soon a passionate romance flared up between them, which lasted until Roni's death. Moreover, it turned out that Marnie and Sean had made love all night, just on the eve of the terrible murder. So the investigators began to take a closer look at this person. After talking with Marnie's relatives and friends, the cops became convinced that the woman really fell in love with Sean to the point of unconsciousness and almost prayed for him. After meeting this man, Marnie began to consider him her property and did not give him any peace. And when she found out about Sean's other affairs, she went crazy with jealousy. She rushed to win her lover back from her rivals so that he would belong only to her. Marnie everywhere called Sean her boyfriend, although in reality their relationship was more of a fleeting affair. When the detectives interrogated Marnie herself, she categorically denied any involvement in the crime. But unlike other persons involved in the case, Marnie had no alibi for the time of the murder. According to her, she was allegedly at home with the children at that time, so now all suspicions were focused on her. Marnie became suspect number 1. The detectives had a feeling that they had hit the right trail. In terms of physique, Marnie was quite slim, so she could easily be mistaken for a teenager if she put on a sports hoodie with a hood. Armed with a search warrant, the police visited the woman's apartment and found a lot of interesting things there. After carefully examining the suspect's computer, the detectives found that Marnie had access to Sean's email and tracked his every move. In Marnie's trash, investigators found a damaged computer hard drive and bank statements. From them, it became known that the woman hired a private detective who obtained information about all of Sean's chosen ones, including their full names and addresses. In the suspect's apartment, postal receipts were also found with the addresses of Roni and other women who received anonymous letters. Copying Monica's writing style with her characteristic mistakes, Marnie began to send Roni and Sean's mother revealing messages about his infidelity from an anonymous address. She posed as a European. Marnie talked about Sean all day long, and colleagues at work were worried about her behavior. Even her own daughter, 20-year-old Emily Young, testified against Marnie in court. The girl was worried about her mother's inadequate behavior, who was obsessed with a man and lost self-control. Finally, Sean Gale himself testified in court, who told all the participants in the process about his relationship with Marnie. According to him, they had a stormy romance. But when the defendant found out that there were other women in his life, she was extremely dissatisfied with this news. Marnie tried in every possible way to get Sean to belong only to her, but by this she only pushed him away from herself. Although the man was inclined to consult with her, he doubted whether she could kill pregnant Roni. The key prosecution witness was Christy Passion, Marnie's friend. Christy confirmed the information about Freeman's correspondence with other women and about tracking Sean's mail. In the summer of 2007, Marnie confessed to her friend that she was extremely dissatisfied with the fact that Sean was dating others, and shared her plans to kill him. At that time, Christy did not believe Freeman, thinking that it was just an emotional joke of an offended woman. But when Marnie found out about Roni's pregnancy, she became seriously worried, considering her her main rival, who must be eliminated at all costs. She even told Christy about her intentions to kill Veronica instead of Sean, and then they would be happy together. However, her friend again did not attach any importance to this, considering it another fantasy. And then Marnie confessed to her that she had come to Roni's apartment with a gun, but could not shoot her and left. This confession sounded extremely alarming. Christy tried to calm Marnie down so that she would not do it again. On the eve of the murder, Freeman was visiting her friend's house. The suspect asked her to tell fortunes whether she would succeed in killing Roni. Christie, as an experienced fortune teller, laid out tarot cards. The card that Marnie drew indicated that she would succeed. Marnie was literally obsessed and fixated on the idea of getting rid of the pregnant woman. Christie begged her not to do it, but she seemed not to heed the advice. Later, Passion called Freeman, and they agreed to meet. Christie had a listening device with her, and their conversation was recorded. During the meeting, Marnie confessed to the murder of Roni. Freeman said, "I had dark makeup on my face, and I put on gloves so as not to leave fingerprints, so that no one could recognize me. When Roni opened the door, I pulled out a gun and burst into the apartment." Marnie continued. There was no turning back. Freeman immediately shot Veronica before she could scream and attract attention. The suspect told her friend that she did not touch anything and was wearing gloves, leaving no traces. The apartment was dark, and Marnie was not even sure that she had hit the victim. Freeman also admitted that she rented a black car, bought a disposable phone, and then threw the gun, wig, gloves, and clothes into trash cans. She made every effort to ensure that the murder remained unsolved, but for some reason, she did not think that someone could betray her. The testimony of a friend, and this recording became the most convincing evidence for the jury. Police found a route from Marnie's office to Roni's house on her work computer. Investigators also found out that on October 3rd, she rented a black Volkswagen. The trajectory of the car's movement that day ran from the rental office to Veronica's apartment and back. The defense argued that there was no other material evidence linking Marnie to the crime scene. No DNA, no fingerprints, not even a phone billing. And the prosecution's version was based only on assumptions. The lawyers focused on the dubious testimony of the key prosecution witness, the fortune teller Christie. Her reputation had been undermined long ago. Christie once worked in the U.S. Army as a psychic. Then she claimed that she was the only survivor of the last mission in the Middle East, and the military allegedly erased part of her memories. But later it turned out that Christie had fabricated her combat experience. In fact, she had never been there. Passion made this up to become more competitive against other candidates for this position. So the lawyer urged not to trust her testimony. The defenders insisted that the police simply decided to hang the blame for the murder on a convenient candidate in the person of Marnie, without having any evidence other than circumstantial and an audio recording made under pressure. The lawyer was convinced that the defendant confessed and took the blame for someone else's guilt for the sake of saving her children, because her eldest son was considered a suspect. According to the human rights activist, an unidentified fingerprint was found on the doorknob of Roni's apartment. It did not belong to Marnie, and the police did not even establish whose it could be. However, the prosecutor confirmed, although a fingerprint was found, it could not be identified. No matches were found in the database. But the trace could have been left by anyone who just passed by and was not necessarily associated with the crime. Marnie was found guilty on 2 counts of first-degree premeditated murder of Roni Reiter and her unborn child. She was sentenced to 2 life terms without the possibility of parole. Freeman and her lawyers disagreed with the verdict and filed an appeal, but it was rejected. Marnie claimed that she deliberately confessed to the murder during a conversation with a friend in order to protect her son, and everyone would leave her alone. But no one believed this. Why would she make up so many details of the crime? It just did not make any sense. The defense team insisted that the black car captured by video surveillance cameras was not the Volkswagen that Marnie rented. They also claimed that a man confessed to the police that he had stolen Freeman's gun a few months before the murder, and at that time she no longer had a weapon. The murder weapon was never found. Foreign fingerprints were found at the crime scene. It was established that these traces did not belong to either Marnie or anyone from Roni's family. The lawyer also insisted that male DNA was found on the shell casings found at the murder scene. But the genetic material belongs to an unknown person. It did not match Marnie's DNA. According to the defender, The forensic medical examination, which determined the angles of the shots, showed that the attacker had to be taller than Freeman. And most importantly, a new video from the surveillance camera of the barbershop where Sean arrived in the morning appeared. The recording shows that the man arrived for a haircut much later than he initially claimed during the interrogation. Only at 10 in the morning on the day of Roni's murder, who was shot before 8 o'clock. Gale had previously assured the police that he was sleeping in the morning on the day of the tragedy until 9:15. But it turned out that at 8:50, he was already sending messages to the deceased and made several phone calls before appearing at the barbershop, where he was informed about the death of his beloved. The video points to discrepancies in Sean's timeline of events, which means he could well have had time to commit the crime. The defense suspects him of the murder, but so far they cannot achieve a review of the case in any way. Currently, Marnie is behind bars and continues to insist on her innocence. Sean Gale played for the Chicago Bears for 11 seasons from 1984 to 1994, including the winning Super Bowl season of 1985. To leave behind the painful memories of his life in the USA, the famous athlete moved to Great Britain. He now lives in London and works as an NFL analyst on the British sports channel Sky Sports. Gale appears in their Sunday broadcasts, where he expresses his professional opinion. The case of the murder of Roni Reiter and her unborn daughter Skylar remains one of the most tragic stories that shook the quiet suburb of Chicago. Although Marnie Young is serving a life sentence for this crime, some details of the case still raise doubts among investigators and the public. Unidentified fingerprints on the doorknob, male DNA on the shell casings, discrepancies in Sean Gale's testimony about his whereabouts on the morning of the murder. All this creates the feeling that the final point has not yet been put in this story. This case reminds us of how dangerous the dark sides of the human soul can be. Obsession, uncontrolled jealousy, a maniacal desire to possess another person. All this can turn an ordinary person into a monster. The story of Marnie Young shows how easily one can cross the line between love and obsession, between passion and madness. In the pursuit of her desires, she not only destroyed the life of an innocent woman and her unborn child, but also ruined her own fate and the fate of her children. But the most terrible thing in this story is that such tragedies could have been avoided if people had been able to recognize the alarming signals in time and seek help. Marnie's excessive attachment to Sean, her maniacal tracking of his life, the manufacture of weapons, all these were red flags that, unfortunately, no one took seriously. Even when she shared her plans with a friend, the latter considered it just emotional outbursts of an offended woman. This story teaches us to value the life and freedom of other people. We must remember that love is not possession, but respect for the choice of another person. No feelings justify violence, and no obsession is worth a human life. It is important to notice toxic manifestations in relationships in time, both in our own and in those of our loved ones, and not be afraid to seek professional help. In a world where social networks often create the illusion of control over other people's lives, it is especially important to maintain a healthy attitude towards personal boundaries. The story of Roni Reiter reminds us of the value of every life and that our actions have irreversible consequences. Perhaps if Marnie had realized the destructiveness of her obsession in time, two souls, Roni and her unborn daughter Skylar, would still be with us. This tragic story also demonstrates the importance of attentive attitude to mental health. In the modern world, we have access to professional help from psychologists and psychotherapists who can help cope with toxic emotions and destructive behavior patterns. You should not be ashamed to seek such help. It can save not only your life, but also the lives of other people. If you are interested in this story and want to learn about other high-profile criminal cases, their investigation, and the important lessons they teach us, subscribe to the Detective Brooks channel. Here you will find detailed investigations of the most mysterious crimes, psychological portraits of criminals, analysis of evidence, and the work of investigators. Each story is not just a criminal chronicle, but a deep analysis of human nature and important life lessons. Don't miss new episodes. Click the subscribe button right now.